Gun news now, and Andy, this week the president attempted to flex his political muscles and give America tickets to his gun show, where he would be firing off plans to introduce gun regulation. And introducing gun regulation to America is not an easy thing to do, Andy. It's just not an introduction that has gone well in the past. America, I'd like you to meet gun control. Gun control meet America. Oh, hey, gun control. Go f*** yourself. What? Myself? You're out of your mind. You need me, buddy. What? I need you to get the f*** out of my face, gun control. You're not welcome here. Not well. People absolutely want me here. I've got two friends that want you to leave right now, Mr. Smith and Mr. Weston. Get the Okay, you two, let's slow this thing down. It was a bold move from the president after attempting to deal with healthcare and now attempting to tackle gun control. He's tried to catch two of the most elusive chickens in America's political coop. So much so that when he announced his intention to deliver a speech outlining his gun control plans, you could feel part of the country reacting by saying, hold on, only a week ago it was too early to even talk about gun control, and now suddenly you're actually going to try and do something about it. Are you out of your mind? This is America. So we have the right to never do anything about anything. I think that's the Ninth Amendment. I may be wrong about that, but it doesn't matter because the point is that I'm still free to say that it is the Ninth Amendment. I think that's the Fourth Amendment. Or is that your right to free bagels? I can't remember. But okay, Mr. President, if that is your real name, you want gun control, shoot. Oh, I'm sorry. You're probably going to ban that word too now, aren't you? Let me put it a more appropriate way. You want gun control, get it in the most effective way. Line it up in your sights, scream, look at me, and then shoot the problem in the face.
So he's called for a ban on assault weapons and high-capacity magazines and wider background checks on people buying guns. Now, I mean, it's one of these quintessentially American issues, John. It's very hard for outsiders to comprehend. And, I mean, is it the case that in that controversial Second Amendment, the Founding Fathers wanted ordinary citizens in the 21st century to be able to carry assault weapons with high-capacity magazines and not have their backgrounds checked before they bought them? I mean, they didn't seem to say so explicitly, but they didn't not say so explicitly either. So you can see the confusion. Yeah.
Well, the ironic thing about gun control and the basic impossibility of passing it is that the vast majority of Americans are in favour of some form of gun control, but somehow that isn't enough. In other words, some form of gun control is something that around 80% of Americans want, but that 20% of Americans say that you can prize from their cold, dead balls. Obama announced his intention to issue 23 executive orders to the consternation of the conservative press here, although the truth is there's actually very little he can do with executive orders alone. Anything significant is going to have to go through Congress, and everyone knows this. In fact, at the announcement, the president even read out a letter from a little girl called Julia, who had written to him after the Connecticut massacre, saying, you know, in the letter that Julia wrote to me, she said, I know that laws have to be passed by Congress, but I beg you to try very hard. He then went on to say, so I wrote back to her and said, Dear Julia, you have no f***ing idea what I'm dealing with here. Sure, I'll try very hard, but please try to get your tiny head to understand that these people are f***ing crazy.
Yeah, the logic of the gun lobby seems to be that if Hitler hadn't had a handgun, he wouldn't have been able to shoot himself, so he'd probably still be at large today. But that is true, Andy. That basically is a logical extension to all these Hitler analogies at the moment. But the figures, I was reading some figures that suggested that there are more firearms than people in the USA now, which
yeah, that's entirely plausible.
Well, explain why there are 40 times more intentional homicides pro rata in America than in the UK. And partly, I guess, we're slightly more buttoned up as a nation. We don't let it all spill out. But I think it's clear that guns are dangerous, John, and I think any buglers that fought at the Battle of the Somme would acknowledge that.
So, what were these tyrannical 23 executive orders then? I'm sure they were pretty extreme, rounding up gun owners, modifying guns so they can only fire marshmallows, legally mandating that all guns be shaped like penises. They must be pretty good. So let's take a look. Executive Order 6, Andy, was publish a letter from ATF to federally licensed gun dealers providing guidance on how to run background checks for private sellers. Publish a letter? That is one of his key solutions. getting the ATF and gun dealers to basically become pen pals. What about the police? They have to deal with military-grade weapons on the streets. What do they get? Let's see. Executive Order number 13, maximise enforcement efforts to prevent gun violence and prosecute gun crime. So that seems to basically be an executive order saying, try harder. Oh, come on. Obama is supposed to be a tyrant, not a little league coach. He's asking Congress for much bigger laws, such as curbing sales of semi-automatic weapons, as you mentioned, and large magazines, both of which are ideas exactly as good as they are also certain not to happen. Another suggestion is for Congress to require, again, as you say, a universal background check for anyone trying to buy a gun, to which your first response, especially as a non-American, is, hold on, you don't already do that? Holy shit, that seems dangerous. That seems like it should have happened with the very first rifle sale back in frontier times. Sure, I'll sell you this rifle. Very exciting to be the first rifle seller. Enjoy her, she's a beauty. But just before I do, I hope you don't mind, I'm just going to ask around with a few people just to make sure that you're not a complete maniac. I mean, I'm not going to sell this weapon of death to a stranger without any kind of background check, because that would be f***ing insane.
Well, it's clear. I mean, it's a tough issue for Obama. He's really had to bite the bullet on this one. And, well, it's not easy biting a bullet when it's being fired into your mouth at point-blank range from Charlton Heston's handgun. But it's all about the timing then. You've got to bite the bullet and chew the bullet and then spit the bullet out, reformed into a commemorative lead figurine shaped like a dove. It's a very high-tariff manoeuvre for an American president.
The president signed the executive orders in front of a group of children in a far-from-original form of slightly manipulative political stagecraft. And even this became controversial with Rush Limbaugh, the fully qualified shithead. I mean, fully qualified, Andy.
Postgrad level.
He claimed the president was using the children as human shields. Now, here's the thing. Isn't that technically exactly the opposite of what he was doing? Isn't he trying to literally shield them from gun violence? I think those kids would probably take that trade-off, being physically protected, if they have to briefly metaphorically protect someone else. I still think they come out of that deal pretty well.
Given that the Second Amendment and the right to bear arms was ratified in 1791, perhaps there's a loophole here, John, that will enable nothing to be done, but just a slight tweak of this amendment that will allow people only to fire a weapon that is an exact replica of a 1791 firearm whilst wearing a wig and silly clothes, and address any resulting wounds with historically authentic medical treatments, for example, getting a dog to bark at it or bleeding to death. The US Constitution was adopted in September 1787. It was ratified in May the following year and went into effect in March 1789. Now, just 6 months later, they tagged on 12 amendments. So I think they realised they'd made a few bloopers in their excitement. They were probably drunk, John, understandable. They were exciting times. They just won a key civil war. They rushed these 12 amendments out on the same day. They were probably hurried a bit. They probably didn't sit down and discuss now how might these words be interpreted in 220 years' time, in what all our predictions suggest will be a time when civilization will have advanced so much that all forms of media will be balanced, factually accurate, and geared towards improving the sum of human knowledge and happiness, apart from the odd podcast. Do you think the wording, as it is, of this amendment, people might view it as carte blanche for everyone to wander around with the tools of mechanised slaughter in their pockets? No, Georgie, I'm sure they won't take any notice of this in 220 years' time. I'm sure they'll be smart enough to see this as a document of its time that will need occasional tweaking and twerking as the world changes and develops. Yeah, good point, Jeffo. Let's just chuck this out to get things going and assume people will be grown up enough not to let this become a divisive issue of personal and national identity. Right, Amendment 3, since we're all eternally wise and fair, should we do something about not allowing people to enslave other people, or should we hang fire on that for 75 years? Yeah, good shout. Okay, who likes women? Yeah, who wants to establish their equality as a species and or gender in this little constitution of ours? Just kidding, let's whack that on the back burner for another cheeky 100. Okay, 120. 130, done. Now, right, compulsory for all men to wear powdered wigs. That will never change. Let's write that one in. Write it in.
In what was generally a pretty excellent speech, President Obama even played the Reagan card, saying, "Weapons designed for the theatre of war have no place in the movie theatre. A majority of Americans agree with us on this. And, by the way, so did Ronald Reagan, one of the staunchest defenders of the Second Amendment, who wrote to Congress in 1994 urging them, this is Ronald Reagan speaking, urging them to listen to the American public and to the law enforcement community and support a ban on the further manufacture of military-style assault weapons. And in case you're wondering why on earth Reagan would be for gun control, such as background checks and, an increase in mental health resources, it's probably something to do with the fact that, he was shot by a mentally ill man who illegally purchased a firearm. I'm guessing that sometime around the point that he was clambering off the pavement and into the back of the presidential motorcade before bleeding his way back to the hospital, he thought, something should probably be done about this.
Yeah, but that's just a knee-jerk reaction, John, isn't it? Letting his own personal experience cloud his objective judgment.